All right, let's see what this is about. A California city is taking electric transit into its own hands. Huron, California's Green Raiteros are making the migrant community mobile. I keep bumping up. It's messing up my. Many cities want to electrify their public transit fleets. Doing so, though, requires incredible investments in both vehicles and infrastructure, investments many cities are loath to make. When the bills start to include multiple commas, organizational inertia kicks in for many municipalities. It's easier to keep buying gas vehicles, so why stop? But for cities that lack transit infrastructure, the choice to go electric is a lot simpler. At least that's what the city of Huron, California is trying to prove. Huron is a small city in California's Central Valley, primarily composed of migrant farm workers. Until recently, access from Huron to Fresno was limited to slow, unreliable bus routes that Mayor Ray Leon can't abide. After his petition for more public transit was denied, Leon established a citywide electric transit program based on ride shares of his youth. From the Los Angeles Times, ride share of his youth. What? How old is this guy? What does the ride shares of his youth mean? Tucked behind the boarded up buildings of the town's struggling main drag is an arsenal of innovation that Leon calls Green Raiteria. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Uh, Raterios? It has put Huron on the map as perhaps the greenest migrant farm worker community in the country. Headquartered in a former diesel truck garage, the growing fleet of 9 electric cars maintained by Leon's Green Raterios program shuttles residents all over Fresno County free of charge. It's a Spanish term, Leon said, of the word. Okay, I'm definitely saying that wrong then. And its root, right, slang for ride. How do you say this? How do you actually say this?
Raiteros,
Raiteros.
raiteros.
Raiteros. Okay, Raiteros. Okay. I feel better now. So, Raiteros, right, slang for ride. In the long history of migrant workers seeking offering lifts, the person who gives or receives the ride, Leon said, is a Raitero. Okay. The Green Raiteros program, which is city funded, which with its city funded drivers and investment in EVs and charging stations, is costly. Leon's office funds the system through a patchwork of climate grants, hundreds of thousands of dollars pieced together from programs that get their money from industrial polluters. The Green Raiteros model may not work in every city, but it's a step in the right direction. More public oriented infrastructure and more electric transit are necessities in a country built for cars. Yeah, I've watched a lot of videos about. There's a great YouTube channel actually called Not Just Bikes. And that guy, he's like a city planner that has a real. He has a real hard on for European designed cities, and he has a deep hatred of American designed cities. And he goes through great details to explain where his animus towards American cities come from. And I believe he's a city planner, or at least he has some background in city planning. And he uses that to a great degree, to great. Geez, the words are escaping my brain tonight. He's really good at using his knowledge to explain exactly how our cities are all built to service cars and not people, and how that's costly from a budgeting standpoint, about how cities are built to eventually become unfundable, and how the increasing expenses of operating car centric cities is what causes property taxes to increase, and it causes all sorts of other issues with the cost of maintaining these infrastructures, the cost of maintaining roads, maintaining bridges and overpasses, and all this other sort of stuff. Um, it's not just that it's not efficient for people to live in, it's just not efficient for a municipal funding from a municipal funding point of view as well. The YouTube channel is called Not Just Bikes. It's pretty great, but yeah, I watched a lot. I've been watching a lot of those videos, and I've never been a huge fan of how our streets and whatnot or cities are designed, anyways. But especially now that there's been more talk and consternation about the lack of public transport and the push towards things like a hyperloop, or push towards more public transport, or even just push towards EV stations and whatnot, and trying to live a less carbon heavy kind of lifestyle. It's really become apparent that it's going to be pretty impossible to do that living within the cities as they're built right now. Like, a lot of our cities aren't constructed for carbon efficiency. I think in Austin, we're starting to see a lot of our more major construction efforts are trying to kind of reverse that. It's kind of annoying though, because it's definitely geared towards rich people. Basically, the idea is that only rich people, only rich people can afford to live carbon neutral lives, which really defeats the purpose because there are more poor people than there are rich people. So you're not really going to help. If your attention is to combat climate change, you're not really going to help by tailoring your climate change solution specifically towards the wealthy. But I mean, it's still a good start in at least proving the proof of concept of more walkable neighborhoods, walkable cities, and whatnot. New urbanism, as it was once quoted, as was once termed as. We have stuff like the Domain and the Mueller Development System, development centers here in Austin, that kind of serve as a living proof of concept of those kinds of constructions. And I would like to see more. The larger cities, well, I would say the larger cities outside of like New York maybe are probably a little too far gone. I don't know if Houston can ever be saved. I feel like it'd probably be better just to build new cities and construct them the way that they need to be constructed, and then try to get people to migrate to these new cities. I mean, keeping cost at an affordable level. People are already migrating to smaller cities from larger cities right now, anyways. But the only thing that's doing is it's gentrifying these smaller towns. It's making it nigh impossible to live in, like, you know Norwell, Tennessee, or what, I just made that name up. I don't know if there's a Norwell, Tennessee, but like if Norwell, Tennessee existed, maybe it was like a small but pretty cool college town. Like, it's going to be completely unlivable in 10 years. And then all those people that, are bitching about how Norwalk, Tennessee is only for, rich yuppies. They're all going to go move to the next town. Like, people are moving. Well, actually, I think they're starting to move from Boise. People are moving to Boise from Washington, from like Seattle and whatnot, to freaking Boise, Idaho. And it's like, God, why move to Boise? Well, Boise was just one of those spots. The houses were cheap, and the houses were very cheap, especially relative to the kind of incomes that these people were making in like tech hubs like Seattle. And, remote work meant that you can live in a place that was very far from where your office was. So if you had the money to spend, that's why people are moving to Austin too. If you have the money to spend and you can live in a cool city and work still at the job that's giving you that money to spend, then, you're going to do that. And unfortunately, a lot of these other cities, they also aren't designed for an influx of human traffic. They're built for cars. So you have a town like Austin many years ago. I moved to Austin 22 years ago, and it wasn't built for the population that was coming in then. It was like the neighborhoods were super spaced out. You had strip malls here and strip malls there, and giant parking lots all over the place, and giant roads, and not a whole lot of walkable areas, no bikeable areas to speak of at that time. I mean, it just wasn't meant for, a whole lot of people to not drive their cars around it. It was a very car centric place, and it continues to be, because the city was never really redesigned to take people into account. There should have been, rail systems. We were trying to get rail systems built at that time too, like an actual rail system, that monorail system that actually, serviced all the neighborhoods around Austin, and try to build out like these neighborhood and these communities where, you know, people weren't living in such isolated food deserts, where they couldn't get to a grocery store if they didn't have a car, or they didn't live on a bus route. Make it to where people can actually live within a community and have all of their needs, serviced in that particular area. And if they needed to go outside of that area, then yeah, you can have bus lines, you can have the monorail, or you can have any of these other things that would make a city livable and walkable for somebody that, didn't have a car. But those investments weren't made. they're still haven't really been made here. They put a train on a little transit passenger train on a existing rail line that really doesn't service anybody, and it pisses me off. I'm driving my car, and then I see the train coming if I'm driving by the rails, and like there's never anybody sitting on it. It's just an empty train going back and forth. And it's like, well, it's what's the point if it's just going to be empty the whole time? And it's a real waste. It's a real waste. I do like that they're building those individual communities in a more people focused manner, but I mean, the broader city and like the 2 million people that live in the area, still rely super heavily on cars and whatnot. And, it's just a shitty situation. That's why I feel like you should just build new cities, build them right the first time. Because like was my original point when talking about moving to Austin 22 years ago is that the city then wasn't built to be walkable, and it isn't built now. Like they never did anything to try to retrofit the city towards new and climate efficient needs. And I don't think any other city, whether it's Boise or whether it's Provo, Utah, which was another city that people started moving to en masse, or whether it's Nashville. I think that city's already cooked. It's as cooked as Austin is now. All of these other cities that people are moving to, none of those places are going to make the kind of investments to make those towns be actual livable, walkable towns. So rather than just trying to do a shitty job, and it's costly, it's very costly to retrofit those towns too. So rather than trying to, retrofit some ancient car centric city, it would make more sense to just found a new town. We need new towns, anyways. We've been talking about Chicago, Seattle, you know, Denver. We've been talking about those towns for years. We need some new town names coming up. The reshaping of city cores that were designed for cars. I'll have to read this a little later. Suburbia, a consequence of private auto ownership. Yep. And it kind of sucks because I'm a car guy. I'm a car guy. I like cars. I've got one in my garage that's just waiting for me to like find the initiative to actually restore. Um, and cars are cool, and I get it. It's a part of the American culture of just rampant independence. You once you get your car, you are your own person. You can just hop in it, drive off to wherever you want, at any point in time, whenever you want. I get it. I understand that, and I have a lot of that in my brain too. Like, there's a lot of that in me where I am reluctant to give up a car, but at the same time, I mean, what good is my car gonna do if my city is underwater or it's frozen out? My cars weren't serving a whole lot of purpose during the winter storm when I was frozen in the house. So, you got to make your sacrifices where you can. I want an electric car. I was trying to get the car I drive as my daily is a Hyundai Sonata. It has good gas mileage, but I was trying to get the hybrid Sonata. I really want an electric car. The infrastructure isn't there to really support electric cars the way it needs to be, and I know there's like these initiatives to try to build a shit ton of charging stations and whatnot. But I mean, even with a bunch of charging stations, like getting people to move towards electrics in the way that they really need to is going to require not only charging stations to be as ubiquitous as gasoline stations, which I don't know if that's possible without retrofitting an actual gasoline station. It's not just about putting up a couple of electric pumps at a gas station. It's about having all of those pumps available for whoever wants it whenever they need it. But then also, you're gonna have to do better than plugging your car into the charge port and waiting for 10, 20, 30 minutes or so. Like, we need like intense rapid charge. Plug that bitch in, and then for as long as it takes to put 30, $40 worth of gasoline into a gas tank, that's how long it should take to charge an electric battery. I don't know if you could do that safely right now, but that's where we need to get to in order to really tell people, okay, this is a viable alternative. You could buy a Ford F-150 Lightning. You could drive it, use it as your work truck or whatever you want to do with it. The same thing that you would do with a normal F-150. And when you're low on power, you could just go to that station, plug it in, wait for about a minute, and then unplug it, and you're good to go, just like you would be with a gas car. And if you decide to drive up to Dallas or whatever, then at any point along the way, you could do the same thing. Just plug it in, wait a minute, unplug it, go. That's the only place, that's where we need to get to in order to be able to tell people, all right, you should feel comfortable giving up your gasoline car in this kind of climate. I don't know how long we are off from that, but we are a ways off. Hey guys, thanks for watching this video. If you liked what I said, what Justin said, if you like the content we're providing, if you had any kind of laughs at all, even if you hate us, if you hate my guts, if you want to stab me, if you want to say all sorts of horrible things to me, cool. Like the video, subscribe. You'll get fed all sorts of shit you'll probably hate. And if you like us, you'll get fed all sorts of shit you probably like. So please and thank you.